Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about cold stress. This is the latest in our installment of webinars. And it's timely, right? It's November. I'm coming to you from Houston, where it's not yet cold, but I'm sure it's cold where some of you are. A little bit about Arbil before we start, for those of you who aren't very familiar. Arbil's been providing safety products and services for over 75 years now. Our mission is really simple. We envision a future in which every employee returns home safely every day. With our exceptional environmental health and safety programs and products and cutting edge technology, we feel we can have that mission realized. We are a woman-owned business. We are ISO 9001 certified. We're a GSA contract holder. All we do is safety. And with that in mind, we started this series of webinars to help spread the education of safety, to learn more ourselves, and to help you do what you need to do to get your folks home safely every day. So a little bit about myself. My name is Kate Manis. I manage the environmental health and safety services and programs here at Arbil. I particularly focus on training and compliance services. I've got about 25 years experience in EH&S world, starting in biomedical research and higher education. Did a stint in oil and gas, and I've been here with Arbil a little over 2 years now. I'm looking forward today to learning with you through our outstanding guest speaker that we've got today. His name is Brad Sipe. Brad is the Director of Business Development at Lakeland Industries. He spent the last 20 years dedicated to the innovation and development of industry-leading FR workwear. You name it. He's done the speaking, he's created white papers, researched the technology, and Brad's knowledge of product design and flame-resistant fabrics has really resulted in some transformative and award-winning product lines available exclusively through Lakeland Industries. And Brad's going to talk to us today about some of the ways that we can address cold stress through the clothing and the garments we wear. One thing I also always like to start our webinars off with is a discussion of the safety maturity life cycle. As Arbil has spoke to different companies, our customers in varying industries, we've found one thing to be true, and that is that often companies have difficulty understanding where they are relative to others when it comes to safety and where they are in their safety journey. So we've developed this safety maturity life cycle to help companies understand where they are currently, to envision where they want to be in the future, and to help them make the plans and make those movements to get to where they want to be on their journey. So as we go through this webinar today, I'd ask you to think about your own company, where you think you are, right? Are you at the level of standard where you're meeting your safety commitments? However, you see some recurring incidents. Are you more around the compliant side of things, where you're checking all of the boxes, you have safety training in place, you're trying to do all you can to prevent incidents before they occur? Or would you consider yourself world-class? Are you not only proactive in ensuring that safety incidents don't occur in the first place, but are you sharing that information so that you can help others improve? So consider as we go through today, and especially if you want to think about it in terms of cold stress, where is your company here on the safety maturity life cycle? And where do you think you would like to be? So brief agenda for today, we're going to talk about occupational cold stress, right? We'll talk about some of the risk factors that can really impact how cold stress affects each individual's body, and how they can result in the injuries and illnesses that we anticipate to see when the temperatures drop and we have folks working outside. We'll talk about the hierarchy of controls and how we can apply those to help mitigate the impacts of cold stress. And then I'll turn it over to Brad, who's going to talk about moisture wicking technology and how we can effectively layer our garments to provide, not only warmth for our workers who are working outside, but also give them the opportunity to be comfortable and to be able to freely work in the environment. Then we'll follow up at the end with some questions and answers. Now, as we go through today, if you have questions, you don't have to sit on them and worry that you might forget them. If you want to drop them into the chat, we can come back to those if they're not answered throughout the presentation. We'll come back to those in the Q&A. And we'll also do a couple of polls as we go along. So I'm going to test you as well and see what you know or what you think about cold stress as we go through. So starting off, winter is approaching, winter is coming, right? The occupational risks for outdoor workers start to expand. We're starting to put heat stress aside, but now we need to start focusing on cold stress as we move from the fall into the winter. And it's important to remember that it's not just outdoor workers. There are some workers in indoor facilities, such as in cold storage, where cold stress is a year-round concern. Really what it comes down to is the simple fact that cold stress injuries and illnesses are completely preventable. We just have to apply some thoughtful mitigation to help keep our employees safe and warm and make sure that they go home just as they arrived at work this day. So what's cold? Definitely the definition of cold can vary regionally. If you live with anybody else, the definition of cold can vary within your own house. I know that to be true. We all have different sensitivities and sensibilities. So it's really difficult to put an exact number on what cold is, right? But what we do know is that cold stress occurs anytime the temperatures start to drop below normal, the wind speeds pick up, and heat starts to leave our body. That is how cold stress starts for our bodies. As the skin temperature drops, as the blood goes into the core of the body to maintain core temperature, that's when we start to see the impacts and effects of cold stress. To illustrate it here, you'll see in the red, this is the area of the body that maintains the core temperature, right? And that area can expand and contract depending on the temperature fluctuations. Now, when we're in a cold environment, the blood vessels in the extremities, indicated by yellow here, and the hands and the feet, the nose and the ears, the blood vessels in these areas will constrict and send the blood into the center of the body to try to maintain that core temperature. As a result, the extremities get cold and can be the first things that we see impacted by cold stress injuries and illnesses. But it's important to remember it's not just the cold that is impacting the body's reaction to cold stress. We have a number of underlying risk factors, some that we can control and some that we can't. One big risk factor when it comes to cold stress is the working conditions, and are they wet or dry? Anybody who's ever had to shovel snow outside and your feet are freezing cold, but as soon as you dump some snow into your snow boot, it gets so much worse because cold and wet is a combination, makes the cold stress that much worse. You have to also consider clothing. As I discussed, we'll talk about that in some detail later, but are workers wearing the proper clothing? Are they layering their clothing correctly? And then there's also a number of underlying health conditions that can impact a body's reaction to cold stress. Hypertension, hyperthyroidism, diabetes, really anything that impacts the circulation is going to have an impact on how the body reacts to cold stress, right? General poor physical condition as well. We can do there are some things that we can't do anything about. We can't control Mother Nature. We can't control the age or fitness level of our employees, what they've done the night before, what their level of hydration is. There are some things that we can move the needle on by focusing on education and prevention, and ensuring that workers know what to look out for when it comes to cold stress injuries. And with that, we have our first cold stress injury poll. And for this one, I'm going to show you some pictures. Match the image with the injury. And for this one, you can, we do have the poll coming up. Or actually, you know what, for this one, why don't you put your answers into the meeting chat for me, okay? So which image do you think is trench foot? Which image do you think is chilblains? And which image do you think is frostbite? And I'll give you just a moment. Okay, I see some answers coming in. Well, let's see. Let's see how good you did. So, if you guessed that the picture of the hand was chilblains, you are correct. And chilblains is probably the most common cold-related injury that you've never heard the word of before, right? But chilblains is simple. It's just a form of vasculitis. It's some painful inflammation of the blood vessels, usually impacting the hands and the feet. This occurs when the temperatures are cold but not yet freezing. So we're still above freezing, but we're in cold temperatures when we see chilblains. Some of the symptoms include redness, itching. It can result in blisters and ulceration as well. If it goes too long, it gets too bad. Some of the risk factors that are unique to chilblains include tobacco use, poor nutrition. Certain autoimmune disorders can also put individuals at a heightened risk of experiencing chilblains. So that was our picture of our hands. Now, trench foot. If you picked the picture of the wrinkly feet, you picked right. That's trench foot. So trench foot happens again when we're exposed to cold but not yet freezing temperatures, but also to wet conditions. The combination of the cold and wet cause the blood vessels in the feet to constrict and results in wrinkly feet that are red skinned, they're numb. It can result in leg cramps, swelling, can even result in gangrene. So it's very, and I know that a number of our folks who are joining us today are former military. Trench foot is often a consideration and a concern within the military. If you're working on your feet, you have to take care of them, right? Treatment for trench foot is pretty simple. If you catch it early enough, just gentle rewarming and elevating the feet can help reverse those symptoms. And then the last picture was frostbite. If you saw that slight blue tinge to the tips of those toes, you picked right for frostbite. Frostbite actually occurs once we are below freezing. It's actually the freezing of the skin and the underlying tissues around the skin. Symptoms of frostbite can include numbness, stinging, that blue waxy skin as you see in the photo here. In severe cases can even lead to the need to have toes or digits or even entire extremities amputated. So we have to be very concerned when the temperatures drop below freezing to ensure that we're looking out for frostbite. Some additional risk factors for frostbite include contact with metal or water. Again, cold and water don't mix, cold and metal don't mix very well either. Dehydration, smoking, diabetes, sedative medications. Again, anything that can impact our circulation is going to impact and exacerbate these cold-related injuries. Now, probably the one that most of us think of when we think about what happens if we get too cold is hypothermia. Hypothermia occurs when the body is exposed for prolonged periods to cold temperatures and the body's cold temperatures and the body's internal core temperature starts to drop. We start to see shivering, fatigue, we see loss of coordination, confusion, and disorientation. A lot of the same things that we see when we were talking about heat stress back at the beginning of the summer, we see some of those symptoms indicating that hypothermia may be occurring. Treatment for somebody who has experienced or is experiencing hypothermia is to move them into a warmer area and remove any kind of wet clothing and then warm them gently with some dry blankets and providing, if possible, some hot packs in the armpits or groin, because again, we're trying to restore that core temperature very gently until the whole body warms back up. And you can also provide warm beverages as long as the individual is conscious. So now we know what to look for when it comes to cold stress. We should talk about how we can avoid getting there in the first place. And anytime we discuss how we can avoid and mitigate risk, we have to consider the hierarchy of controls, right? We have to think about what is the most effective means for controlling a hazard and try that first and then work our way through to the less effective means. And starting with considering cold stress, thinking of elimination or a substitution, it gets kind of difficult, right? The only thing that we could really do in that realm would be to maybe move that work inside. If that work that we're doing outside in the cold can be done inside in a warmer environment, then we could eliminate that cold. Otherwise, we're going to start to look to engineering, administrative, and personal protective equipment to try to control those hazards. So for engineering controls, one thing that you can do is provide heated warming shelters. Now this is really important, especially if you are doing some work that is kind of out and away from buildings. If we have some structures where people can go in and take a break and get warm, it's very important to be able to provide that. We can also look to provide machines and tools that don't require workers to remove their gloves to operate. I think in this day and age, increasingly our machinery is requiring touchscreen operation, right? So providing gloves that have touchscreen capability will assist with or having, or engineering out and not having that equipment needing to be operated without gloves is really the key to trying to attack it from an engineering perspective. Now, as far as administrative controls are concerned, there's a number of things that we can do. We can train our workers, right? We can train them to know what to look out for, to know how to prevent those cold-related injuries. We can try to schedule our outside work during the warmest part of the day, right? So that we're eliminating the colder parts of the day. We can make sure that our folks are physically fit and prepared to work outside in the conditions. One way we can do that is to, slowly acclimate to the conditions. Rotating workers throughout the day between the cold areas and the warm areas and providing those frequent short breaks to warm up will definitely assist. Another thing you can do and is really effective is establishing a buddy system. I've always said that an injured person is the worst person to trust, right? Because I don't know the last time you tripped and fell or were sick in public and you said, no, I'm fine. Please don't make a fuss over me. I'm okay. Well, you really aren't necessarily okay. When we have the buddy system in place, there's somebody watching your back and can say, hey, Kate, I noticed that you aren't actually acting like yourself. I think there's something else going on. Having that buddy system to look out for one another can be really, really helpful when it comes to cold stress. And then finally, providing warm beverages, right? Having warm beverages or soup on site will really help maintain that core body temperature and help warm folks up when they're on their breaks. You do want to avoid alcoholic drinks and coffee as well, because they can cause dehydration and make the circulation even worse. So if you can't eliminate, substitute, engineer, or administrate out the problem, you're left with personal protective equipment as your last means of defense. And it can be, in some cases, the only thing that you can really do to help prevent cold stress. So we have to be, again, really thoughtful in our application. When it comes to personal protective equipment against cold stress, we have to focus on covering the yellow parts of that diagram, again, the extremities, the parts of the face. So hats, hoods, and face coverings are important. Wearing insulated and waterproof gloves and boots to help keep the fingers and toes warm and dry. And utilizing moisture wicking clothing layers. We often think about moisture wicking being something associated with hot weather, but it's also very important to prevent cold stress as well. So one more poll question for you, and you had seen this one pop up. This is, which of the following is important when selecting cold weather garments? Moisture wicking, breathability, or quick drying fabrics? And I'm looking at the responses now, and I see, about half of you went for moisture wicking, and then breathability, quick drying fabrics. Those kind of, they're neck and neck. They're tied for second place. Well, The real answer is D, all of the above. They're all very important in selecting cold weather garments. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brad to talk about cold weather clothing.
Thanks, Kathleen. Good to be with everybody today. There is a commonality in both heat stress and cold stress, and that process is called moisture wicking. And it's basically with the subject that high performance fabrics were originally created to boost an athlete's performance in extreme outdoor situations by keeping them drier and cooler in hot conditions and warmer in cold weather. Now your industrial athletes can compete with world-class high performance fabrics from Lakeland. There are two different factors involved here that we always like to look at. One is the physiological play, and the other is the psychological effect. Keeping the body cooler by facilitating thermal regulation, which is your body's cooling mechanism, is a physiological advantage. The psychological advantage comes from knowing your garments won't become uncomfortable by being weighed down with excessive moisture. So in every garment from Lakeland, not only is there an arc rating, but we have superior air perm, vertical moisture wicking ability, the transport of moisture from skin side to the outside of the fabric, where it can spread and dry faster. And then the water vapor transmission rate is really about the layering system, moving moisture from layer to layer. So everything to keep you more comfortable and out of cold stress should have those properties. Now, one key for moisture wicking is to maintain your overall dryness. It needs to be constant and not fluctuate. Think about when you're outside and you start working a little bit harder and you start to sweat. You don't want your inner clothes, your base layer to become moisture soaked and then you stop and it tries to dry. The key to superior moisture wicking is constant dryness, where it will perform no matter how wet that garment is getting, it dries just as quick or not quicker. And then the key is pulling moisture off the body, pushing it through the fabric, and moving it to the outside of the garment to dry quicker. Now, moisture wicking fabrics. Um, there's a long history here. Moisture wicking has been around for over 20 years. I've been wearing moisture wicking clothes since they first came out. And it really started with polyester. And polyester, as we know, is a hydrophobic fabric. It hates water, it repels water. This was taken to a mill and it had a finish that was put into it, which helped it absorb moisture. The problem with this is the finish will eventually wash out and then you're stuck wearing polyester. So the question became, how do you create a moisture wicking fabric that is permanent, that still has a soft hand? Thus, the introduction of a blend of fibers that were both hydrophobic, big name, but break it down, hydro water phobic hating, blend it with hydrophilic fibers, hydro water philic loving fibers together. So there are typical fiber blends that are hydrophobic that you can see blended with hydrophilic. And there are many of these available in the market. But what is superior? What works better? Some are just slow moving of moisture, others are faster. Well, before Lakeland got started, we did the research and testing and found that Lakeland's unique fiber blend of using 60% hydrophobic fibers blended with a 40% blend of hydrophilic was the optimal blend, meaning it worked better. It drew moisture off the body quicker. It pushed it through the fabric and dried faster. That's what you wanted to do. This is the process that is permanent moisture wicking technology, and you should demand it in all your ARFR garments. So I always say, become a better shopper. Look at the tag. Every garment that's labeled FRAR has to have the blend of fibers that are involved in it. So if you see a tag that says it's 100% of any one fiber, as an example, FR cotton, that wicks moisture, know that that has a finish, a topical finish, and it will eventually wash out. And then you have paid for something that it's not going to do. So here's an example of a label that has a 50% motor acrylic blended with a 40% lyocell and a 10% Tworon. Well, if you look back at the previous slide and you can dictate what those fibers are, 50% motor acrylic with a 10% Tworon, there's your 60% hydrophobic blended with your 40% lyocell. That is the optimal blend for moisture management. So Lakeland built their layering system containing this blend of fibers throughout their base layer, through our mid-weight layers, to our outerwear, knowing that you're going to be cooler, drier, warmer, no matter the conditions out there.
And here I have another quick poll for you folks if you want to put your answer into the meeting chat. Which one of these do you think would help you prevent cold stress better? The gray jacket on the left or the brown jacket on the right? You can drop gray or brown or left or right into the chat. Sarah says they both look comfy. You're right. They do both look comfy. I'm seeing some grays come in. The left coat. Okay. All right. Well, what do you say, Brad?
Well, it's the typical scenario of getting cold stress is layering incorrectly. So follow me with this. Um, you put on a base layer that wicks moisture, and then you put on a midweight garment that will continue to move moisture, and then your outerwear needs to protect you from the elements, which is wind, water resistant, and be moisture wicking. So you have less weight on your back, and you can continue to move the moisture from garment to garment to garment. What usually happens is people layer from the outside in. They go in and try to put on this 15 or 20 ounce jacket, and it does nothing but keep all the cold on the inside. It prohibits moisture moving throughout that jacket. So as your level of exertion goes down a little bit, that base layer does not dry out. All that cold is trapped in. That's the typical scenario of how cold stress starts. So layer from inside out, not outside in. We do it in our consumer life, when we go for a hike up in the mountains or we go for a run or a jog, anything, we're used to layering outside of work. Now get used to it on the inside of work. So, what is a layering system? It's really simple. There are three basic layers. Your base layer it's next to skin. This is your comfort level, and really your last line of defense when you go to think about it. This layer's most important function is to wick moisture off your skin. Where most people screw up their layering system is with your midweight layer. This is your insulating layer. This layer continues to move moisture, but more importantly, it retains the body heat to protect you from the cold. This is where you wear different weights of fabric to protect you from the elements. Instead of wearing that big, heavy jacket, this should be your different weight of fabric to protect you from the heat. And then your outerwear, this also needs to wick moisture, but more importantly, it shields you from the elements, water, wind, and snow. Once that can penetrate your outerwear, then you really have no shot. A quick example of this, I used to be a very good downhill skier, and you wore a base layer, you wore a different thick midweight layer, depending upon, you started in the morning, it was 20 degrees out, you started warming up a little bit, then you took that midweight layer off and you put something lighter weight on. And you didn't have a 20-ounce jacket out there. You couldn't move. You needed the mobility. You had a very lightweight windbreaker on most of the time that kept out the elements. Same process is the layering system. So high insulation levels around the body is really equal to the drying time of the garment and warmth. It's just different weights of fabric to keep you drier. You put on different weights of your mid layer that correspond to the outside temperature. Again, the weight of the fabric is equal to extra warmth as long as that layer continues to wick moisture. I seldom, and you probably seldomly, end up wearing the same garments that you do in the afternoon or end of day as you did in the morning. Again, the key here is layering from the inside out, not the outside in. So, layering is just not about warmth. It should be a strategy that keeps you dry, warm, and you're going to be better protected and have superior mobility. So, with permanent moisture wicking fibers in your base layer, moisture is going to move and be pulled off your skin quickly, so you never feel wet on the job. Lakeland's FR apparel absorbs more moisture, dries faster than anything out in the market. It creates a drier zone next to your skin. Now, staying warm from your base layer to your outer layer, you should never worry about your sweat turning cold when you stop activity. Stay comfortable and warm with a layering system designed to pass moisture through each layer quickly. So think about this. You have a base layer on and a midweight, and then you throw a jacket on that has zero breathability. It doesn't wick moisture. Your layering system's kind of irrelevant. You need each layer to work together. So a superior layering system means all garments contain the word permanent moisture wicking fabrics to pull moisture from fabric to the outer layer, all while keeping the elements out. Lakeland's outerwear provides water and wind resistance along with superior moisture wicking as well. This all creates a superior mobility out in the field as well. I've seen so many people out there wearing a system or a jacket where they get arm fatigue, they can't move as well. This is how accidents begin to happen. You want to focus on the task in front of you and not in your clothes. So staying dry and warm is essential for optimal performance. Adding more bulk as you layer is a drawback. So it has to be considered lightweight, maneuverable fabrics that add the protection you need without the bulk and weight that contributes to increased muscle fatigue and slows you down. Remember, windproof, water-resistant, moisture-wicking Lakeland FR outerwear garments offer you the lightweight protective layers you've been waiting for. We didn't talk anything about air circulation, but this is also a key for you. If you get a little bit of air circulating between layer to layer, This helps to keep you warmer as well and drier, as this can come and pick up moisture off you. Now, one thing that we were able to do with our layering system, the size of shirt that you are is the size of your midway garments and your outerwear built together. I've seen too many concepts out in the field where if there's a large shirt being purchased, somebody has to buy, that same person has to buy an extra large jacket just to fit over their layering system. Well, that jacket is cumbersome for them. It doesn't fit correctly. It just doesn't work. So a layering system should work, allowing air to penetrate and have air perm with you.
And I think that that's a really great point, Brad. I think for all personal protective equipment, it comes down to a couple of factors for the workers. One, if it's not comfortable, I'm not going to wear it, right? And two, I have to still be able to do my job. So I think all of the information you shared is really important, and understanding that you don't need a bulky jacket, but what you need is a very thoughtful system of garments that help remove the moisture and keep the heat in. So, in conclusion, as we are shifting and weather's moving from fall to winter faster in some areas than here in Houston, but all of us need to be thoughtful and be getting prepared to address the impact of cold stress on our workers. The cold stress injuries and illnesses, they're preventable. We can get ahead of it and we can keep those incidents from occurring. Thoughtful application of the moisture wicking fabrics, the layering, allowing that circulation, all of that together is going to go toward making a more comfortable and happy employee who can do their job, who is not distracted, and who is not going to succumb to cold stress. And they'll be more productive workers, and they'll meet our mission. They'll go home at the end of the day as safe and as healthy as they came to work. So with that, does anybody have any questions? If you have any questions for myself or Brad, you can drop those into the chat. And as I wait to see if any questions pop up, I will also direct your attention to the chat. Sari has entered into the chat a survey link. We would love your feedback. One of the things that we strive for is to always be able to improve these webinars. So the only way we can do that is with your input. If you have any thoughts that you would like to share, please, I encourage you to click on that link. I'll also have a QR code for you in the coming slides. That way we can focus on providing the information that you really want to hear. So with that, and we have no questions, I want to close out with, again, the safety maturity life cycle. And I'll post this question for anybody who feels like answering at this point. If you want to drop it in the chat, if not, that's fine. But consider now where you think your company is. Are you at the standard or engaged level? Are you compliant? Are you proactive? Are you really world class? Are you really ringing that bell when it comes to safety? If you are unsure, if you still don't know where you are, please let us help. Arbel would love to help you understand where you are and help you map your activities to get toward world class. We've been doing it for over 75 years. We only focus on safety, and we'd love the opportunity to help you out. You can click on that QR code with your phone and schedule a complimentary safety strategy session with us. Learn about our holistic approach, how we apply products and training and consulting and services to help ensure that you get to meet your safety needs. Also, here is that other QR code. If you didn't get the link from the chat, if you want to click on that and share your feedback, we would love it. It's a short survey. Would appreciate that. Also, if you have any ideas, any safety concerns that keep you up at night, things that you would like for us to talk about in upcoming webinars. I want to share my email address with you. Please feel free to email me at any time and share those topics. We're always looking to come and bring things that are of value to you that we can all learn from. And with that, I really appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you so much for attending. I know not only is the weather getting colder, but we are staring down the winter holidays at this point. So if you are traveling next week, please travel safely. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.